Good morning, good morning. I hope you're having a very positive start to your day. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I have shifted 16 kilos in 8 weeks and how I am feeling like a complete sack of shit now. Ironically, I started this aggressive fat loss phase to try and make myself feel better. Now I feel like I've been hit by a van. I'm being very melodramatic, by the way. I'm going to go into exactly why I feel like shit. For anyone that has experience with like aggressive fat loss or just dieting to a certain point, I guess, where your food has to get like very low and your output has to get very high, you'll know what I'm talking about. For anyone that's kind of not gotten to that point and they've only felt the positives and the benefits of fat loss, then I will enlighten you as to exactly why that is and how I have went about this fat loss phase and why, okay? So a little bit of context here. Around, I forget the actual date, I think it was July, August time, I tore my quad. And basically that completely put me out of action for a good while. Like 2 to 3 months, something like that, where I couldn't walk for a period of time. I couldn't train. I certainly couldn't do cardio. So I was sitting around just trying to focus on work and like studying for a period of time. But I'm very much someone where exercise helps me feel productive, it helps me feel efficient, and it keeps my head in the game, let's just say. So very, very quickly, because I was just sitting about kind of feeling like sorry for myself and feeling unmotivated and a little bit like bitter or negative about the whole thing, it just very much turned into like, me being pissed off and frustrated. And I'm a very positive person, but I was struggling to stay positive during that time. Anyway, obviously because I wasn't training or exercising, my appetite and digestion went to shit, my eating then went to shit, and I ended up getting quite fluffy. I don't want to say fat, because I think everyone's like perception of what fat is completely different, but it was fat for my standards, okay? I got out of shape and I felt sluggish, I felt bloated all the time, my sleep was horrible, digestion was obviously horrible, productivity was out the window, just like everything that I had very much dropped to a standard that below a standard that I hold for myself. My work was starting to take a hit in the sense of like I was just doing the bare minimum, I wasn't sleeping great. I would honestly say my relationship with Kimberly probably took a little bit of a hit as well, because I just wasn't a great person to be around. I wanted to change that. So eventually when I started getting better, like I made a point of just like even going for walks. Like that was the first thing I started doing, just getting outside for some fresh air, for some sunlight, and just moving. And immediately that started to make me feel better. Obviously, my nutrition wasn't horrible. It was just like inconsistent. I wasn't eating shit or anything like that. I was just, it would chop and change between 5 meals a day to fucking 1 or 2. And it would always be decent food. But I think just given the fact that I obviously wasn't moving, not training or anything like that, I was just naturally putting on weight more than anything else. So it is what it is, and it was a frustrating time for me, but I do feel like I've learned a lot, and it's made me mature in a way that I now pay way more attention to my mobility, my flexibility, stretching, things like that, and let's say injury prevention as a whole. It's made me kind of prioritize that just a little bit more. Basically got to a point where it was like, right, I can get back into the gym, I can do cardio, I can walk, hallelujah. Let's get back in shape, because I feel like crap. I'm not liking what I see in the mirror. I feel like I'm soft, I feel fat, I sound like a hormonal woman right now. No offense, ladies. But I just wasn't liking what I was seeing in the mirror. My sleep was rubbish, my digestion was rubbish, and I was like, right, the only way I can change this is by going into a fat loss phase. I didn't want to fuck about, because I wanted to be back in a muscle building phase, because that's where I was at, and I wouldn't say I looked my best. I liked how I looked. I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I'm going to put this up on the screen, actually. I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I wasn't the fattest I'd ever been. I was strong. I was powerful. My food was at an all-time high, but I was still in a good place, like physically, mentally. Sleep was good. Cardio was good. Everything was just ace. And I was loving life. And then I tore my quad, and then it just went to shit. So I wanted to basically didn't want to dick about. I wanted to get back to that point as soon as I possibly could. So I was like, right, I'm I know I can commit to aggressive fat loss. I am one of these people where it's like, I would much mentally, if I know I'm going to say 8 to 12 weeks of just hammering it, that sits better with me than saying like 20 weeks of gradual fat loss. Now, I'm not condoning that anyone does this, by the way. I'm not advertising it or recommending it. I'm not suggesting it. I think if you are someone who is inexperienced, you've not really successfully dieted in the past, and you probably have a lot of body fat to lose, do not take this approach, okay? Because it will... I don't think it's a good way to diet for your first time. Okay, and I think if you have a lot of body fat to lose, it's maybe not the best approach either. If you are going to do it, work with someone who knows what the fuck they're doing, because I think aggressive fat loss could be very effective and efficient for someone who is incredibly overweight or obese when it's structured properly. But the reason why a lot of average people, a lot of like the general public who's not in the health and fitness space and like they just try to lose a little bit of weight and look after themselves, if you fall into that demographic, it's you're less structured, let's just say. And I think you just hammer an aggressive calorie deficit for weeks on end until you get to a point where you hit the fuck it button and then it's back to square one again and it just completely falls apart. That's not how to go about this. So basically, there was a weekend, what date was it? I started the aggressive fat loss phase on the 27th of October, and the weekend, that was a Monday, because every diet starts on a Monday. So the weekend prior to that, I basically wrote out my plan in the sense of what I was going to do with cardio, what I was going to do with my food, what I was going to do with my training. And for my training, I went from basically doing like 3 sessions of upper body stuff a week to then just doing 5 sessions a week of push-pull legs, upper, lower. My upper body sessions, it was basically two sets per exercise. Probably in the region of like, what was it, 8 to 12 sets per muscle group per week, except for legs. I would do 2 sets for things like leg extension, leg curl, 3 sets for calves, even though that does fuck all for me anyway, so what's the point? But things like a squat, a leg press, a single leg press, an RDL, heavy compound movements, I stuck to 1 set per exercise until my recovery felt like it had caught up. And if I'm being completely honest, because I was going into a savage calorie deficit off the back of that injury, I really didn't want to hammer my lower body with a lot of volume, because I know I was going to be doing cardio and I was going to be walking a lot as well and doing heaps of steps. It really wasn't something where, as much as training should be the main stimulus, I would always advocate that your training volume and intensity should be prioritized over things like cardio and steps, but just due to the fact I was coming off the back of an injury, I had to compromise somewhere, okay, because I wanted to really get the fat loss. Get the fat off. I was willing to compromise a little bit less training volume so I could get more cardio output done anyway. So, starting point, 27th of October, 114.5 kilograms. Fairly fluffy and chunky, okay? Also just very flat in the sense of like I obviously hadn't been training, and if I had been, it was very inconsistent, because not only did I have a quad tear, I had like bicep tendonitis of all fucking things throughout that time too. So I couldn't, like, even training back, training chest, training shoulders. Ironically, the thing that I could actually train most effectively with bicep tendonitis was my biceps. Everything else was just like absolute agony. Make that make sense? I don't know. It is what it is. So like my upper body, it wasn't just my lower body that kind of downsized and got a bit flat. It was my upper body as well, which is like a battle of laughs, really. And I remember looking at the photos and I was like, right, okay, yeah, aggressive fat loss. Let's get this kicking off. So my food was inconsistent prior to this. My food had gotten up to a point where it was just over 6,000 calories. In that photo that I showed before, where I was like really happy with how things are going. And I would honestly say by the time I was ready to get back into the swing of things, I have no idea what my average calories would have been because my eating was inconsistent. Like, I'm just being completely transparent. I'm not going to claim to be perfect here. So from that, I basically said, right, I could probably guesstimate that my maintenance calories is somewhere in the region of 3,000 to 4,000, probably closer to 4, So I'm just going to put myself into a massive calorie deficit and go for 2,400 calories on a training day. And then I had my rest day calories at 1,800, and fuck me, did that work. My weight loss has been pretty consistent. Okay, I'll go through each week, but on average, I've lost the same amount of weight every single week. I mean, yeah, divide 16 by 8. You can probably guess what the number is there every single week. And that's like 2% of my overall body weight, which is a lot of weight to be losing. Like, even at the get-go, when you're going to be losing a lot of glycogen, water weight, etc., food volume, things like that. So, yeah, my training was set up in a way where it's 5 days per week, training push, pull, legs on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, rest day on a Thursday, upper on a Friday, lower on a Saturday, rest day on a Sunday. Cardio was 20 minutes on a Stairmaster every single morning. Like, get up, do my wanky morning routine, splash some cold water in my face, get myself to the gym, do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster, where I was pushing my heart rate like above 130. I wanted to be dripping in sweat. So I've got like no idea. Like, the calories on it said, I think it was like 200 calories for 20 minutes or something. But again, you can't really go off the calories on the machine because, like, let's say hypothetically a 50 kilo person goes on and a 200 kilo, wild exaggeration there, but a 200 kilo person goes on a Stairmaster at the same level, they're going to burn different levels of calories. So yeah, it's even your like Oura Ring, Apple Watch, Fitbit, whatever wanky kind of like smartwatch you're using, they're highly inaccurate as well at the same time, so you can't really go by them. Anyway, it's irrelevant because it was consistent, okay? So that was pretty much my setup. The 5 training sessions, the savage calorie deficit, and 20 minutes of cardio. To begin with, I was doing 11,000 steps every single day. And I found this fairly easy because I was just very structured and militant with it. I would do a good chunk of steps first thing in the morning after my cardio. I would do a good chunk of steps after my training session in the afternoon. And then me and Kimberly always go for a walk in the evening to have a debrief of our day, basically where she can just tell me about her day. And then when she asks me, I just say, oh yeah, like it takes me 15 seconds to say what I did, and then that's it, after she's just been fucking chewing my ear off for half an hour. I felt like a rant. I felt like I had to get that off my chest. That was very bitchy. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. There's like 3 people that watch this, so that's all fine. Yeah, so my setup was pretty much that: high expenditure, high training intensity, high frequency, but low volume. So like 8 to 12 sets per body part or muscle group, 20 minutes of daily cardio, 12,000. My step count eventually got up to 12,000. It was on week 3. And I think that was not because I needed to, just because I wanted to. And I was like, 11,000, being a little bit artistic here, 11,000 is an odd number. I don't like that. I would rather separate into like 3 chunks of 4,000 steps, and then 12K is done. Happy days. And my training stayed the same completely throughout. I was intending on increasing the leg volume, but I was like, I'm actually struggling to recover from session to session because I'm training legs twice a week. My quads are, by the time the second leg day rolls around, my quads are just good to go. So if I increase the volume, I think my recovery, just with the lack of food going in and the fact that I'm hammering the Stairmaster and walking a lot, the recovery is obviously taking a hit there. So I don't want to then add more volume on top of that just for the sake of it, in a nutshell, okay? So yeah, that was, in a nutshell, that was my setup every single week. And I could see each week, like with each 2 kilos that were coming off, I was visibly getting leaner. Until I've eventually gotten to the point where I've checked in now and like I have visible abs. There's a bit more body fat to come off, but there's visible abs. I can see my obliques, my quad, everything is flat. The way that I've structured my nutrition is I have carbs pre and post workout, and that's it. Like my breakfast is, okay, I have carbs in the sense of fruit, all right? But if we're talking about like actual carbs worth shouting about, is just pre and post workout and intra workout, sorry. So my first meal, I'll run you through like a typical day of eating, let's just say. My first meal is 4 whole eggs and 200 grams of egg whites and a banana. My pre-workout meal, 50 grams of oats, 50 grams of whey isolate, 100 grams of raspberries, 20 grams of almond butter. Intra-workout, along with creatine, EAs, 30 grams of cyclic dextrin. Post-workout, 170 grams of chicken breast, 50 grams of jasmine rice, 100 grams of pineapple, veg and pink salt, blah, blah, blah. And then everything else is like chicken and veg. And then I have a Ninja Creamy in the evening, which is literally just whey protein isolate and almond milk. Fun diet, eh? But it works. And then on a rest day, I remove obviously my intra-workout carbs and my post-workout carbs. So I have one carb meal in that day. And I'll be honest, the diet sucks. But what I have found very effective is keeping myself busy. If you are busy, and this is a fucking golden rule for fat loss, if you are busy, you don't have the time to think about how hungry and tired you are. That is a hack. And this is why the people that say they don't have time for X, Y, or Z and they struggle to stay on a diet, I call bullshit, because if you were that busy, fat loss would be so easy for you. And it really is as simple as that. I remember like the most challenging diet I ever done was pre-COVID. And I was doing 2 hours a day on the Stairmaster. I was training 5 times a day. My calories were like sub 1200 on a training day. I looked like Skeletor and I felt like shit. But I was working 3 hours and doing a 70-hour work week most weeks. And I didn't have the time. Obviously I was aware of how shit I felt, but I never once thought about how hungry I was because I simply didn't have the time. And I think this is why people struggle with their diet in like the evening and such as well, because you've got more time to think about it and think about what food you could have, etc. A golden rule or a secret hack for fat loss: fuck it, make yourself busy. Fill whatever free time you have with just pointless shit if you have to, just so you don't have the opportunity to think about how hungry you are. And 9 times out of 10, you're not even hungry. You're just fucking bored. You're not mentally stimulated. So you just think about, what food you fancy because you're kind of bored and eat more than anything else. But I'm going to do a separate, I'll get my words out. But I'm going to do a separate YouTube video basically talking about my plans in the new year and 2026, because I've got some exciting plans for next year regarding my own physique development and what I want to do in blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to think of like hints that I can give you that are a little bit exciting but don't totally give it away. I'm going to be doing a photo shoot. I'm fine with saying that. I am going to be working with a new coach. I'm basically just going to spill the beans, but just not tell you directly. I'm going to be doing a photo shoot towards the end of the year. I'm going to be working with a new coach, not saying who. And from the conversations I've been having with this coach and what they have sent across, my entire diet is going to be way, way different. It's very wanky, which I'm all about because I want to learn. How I'm going to go about all of this, my timeline, my plans outside of the photo shoot, the coach that I'm working with. I'll go through my diet, I'll go through my training. I will break down everything that I'm doing next year to potentially get leaner and then get big and strong. And next year is going to be the fucking comeback. That will be the comeback off the back of a shite quad tear that completely threw me off course and turned me into a pile of shit. This is going to be the comeback. Okay. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. That is everything that I did to fucking drop 16 kilos over that 8-week period. Nothing magical, nothing fancy, nothing wanky. I literally just put myself into a massive calorie deficit, gave myself daily cardio, gave myself a high amount of steps, trained 5 times per week, and stayed consistent with it. And lo and behold, that worked. And that is what fat loss is. It's nothing special, it's nothing wanky, there's no magic solution, you don't need to change variables all the time. Just start doing something, do it consistently. If it works, stick doing it, keep at it, let's say that. If it's not working or you've plateaued, change one thing. Take away a little bit more food, increase a little bit more cardio. Really is as simple as that, okay? But hopefully you enjoyed that video. Maybe you learned something, I don't know. Maybe you just fucking listened to me rant a little bit about my body confidence issues and apparently my issue with hearing my partner talk about her day. Fucking hell. Anyway, any questions, any issues, leave a comment below, message me on Instagram at rossline.made, and I will catch you in the next one.